Hey everyone, so I am back at working on this bathroom again. It's been quite a while. So I'm fairly well healed up and I can go ahead and start working on this again. What I'm showing you here is the back side of the upstairs bathroom. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because this is where I'm going to be installing the wall-hung toilet in the bathroom upstairs so I can raise the ceiling in the bathroom downstairs. So as you can see there are quite a few water lines and sewer lines and electrical lines that I'm going to have to move so I can put the toilet carrier in this area here. And this is the diagram that I put together. I had to actually take this to the city to show them what I was doing and get confirmation on it. And as you notice right down here, one thing I wanted to point out is I thought I could put in a sanitary T down here to tie into the toilet carrier, and then this is a vent line that goes up through the roof. But I was told that I actually need to use a combo Y instead of a sanitary T. So it looks like a sanitary T, but it's got a little bit of a slope there to it. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So of course I need to get permits to do this work, and that includes plumbing, building permit, and an electrical permit, so I can move the outlet that's down there, move that over in this area here. Installing this wall-hung toilet is a mini project in and of itself, so I put together a task list, and I also calculated how many hours I think it'll take to put this toilet in, and I came up with about 19 to 20 hours. So as you can tell, it's quite a bit of work. So what I've decided to do is do a lot of prep work that will allow me to basically slap this all together hopefully pretty quickly. And one of the things I thought about is right here where the vent lines are, since there's not going to be any water running through them, I'm just going to go ahead and cut those now, and then I have some no residue duct tape in the garage that I'll just go ahead and wrap around those pipes, and then tomorrow when I start to work on this, I can just peel the duct tape off and pull the pipes out and start basically, you know, doing all the real work. The other thing I'm going to do, I've marked on the wall where I'm going to cut, so I just need to reconfirm those measurements again today. I'm not going to, you know, like they say, measure twice and cut once. So I'm going to reconfirm those measurements versus the toilet carrier to make sure that it's going to fit in there correctly. And then I'm going to cut that today too. So I'll just use my oscillating tool and just cut right at these cut lines. This is not a load-bearing wall. I can go ahead and do that now. The other thing right down here where the electrical is, I have to move that box to the left, so I'll do that today too, and I'll just let the box hang over here in the stud bay. Okay, so this is the toilet carrier that I selected. This is the Kohler K6284, and it's mated to the K6299 toilet bowl. That's an elongated toilet bowl. Okay, so I've got this wall pretty much torn apart now, as you can see. So that's, you can see down there at the bottom, I had to take out part of the sole plate that was rotten there, and then the subfloor underneath that. So I'll show you a little bit later what's been done underneath that part of the wall there to reinforce it. All the copper lines have been cut there. Water shut off right now. I don't have a toilet in this house, so that's been kind of interesting to deal with that. The studs have been cut there. As you can see, I've marked for where the water lines are going to flow through that stud cavity there. And then what I've also been doing is marking lines down on the sole plate for where I'm going to be putting in the new studs that are going to frame the wall carrier. Right there, that's a pipe increaser, because the toilet carrier calls for a 4-inch pipe, and all the pipe that I have installed is 3-inch. So I had installed that increaser. This is actually too high right now. So I'm going to go down into the bathroom downstairs and talk a little bit about some of the modifications I need to make down there in order to fit that increaser in, and make sure that that 4-inch pipe is back almost to the edge of the sole plate according to the instructions that came with the toilet carrier. So I thought I'd voice over this part of the video because I was having a tough time forming my thoughts as I went along here. It was really hot that week and I didn't sleep or eat very much during this project. So what I just pointed out there is that I cut the drain line for the shower that goes to the main stack. That's because I needed to move it to the left a few inches to accommodate the new stud that I was putting in up above. And so what I'm talking about here is that I needed to make some adjustments to the stack because of that pipe increaser that I had to add to convert from 3-inch to 4-inch pipe. Here I'm talking about the blocking that I put in to support the toilet carrier. So I put in 2 2x6s and installed those with joist hangers, and then I have a 2x4 lying on its side that supports the new subfloor piece that I put in up there. So what I had to do on the stack, because of the fact that that increaser became a little bit of a problem, it kind of threw off all the heights and the measurements that I originally had. And what I had to do is I had to cut that main stack right there, where that main fitting is. So I'm just talking a little bit about that. So that I just pointed to the fitting, and then talk about right there where I'm going to have to cut below that fitting to drop everything down. So I'm going to have to cut out about 4 inches, and then I also cut a couple inches above the fitting, just so I didn't take out too much. And also, because of the fact, as you see on the right there, that blue junction box is for the light fixture. So I can't bring it down too low because it'll run into the light fixture there. So I'm talking about where I have to cut, pointing that out and dropping everything down. So now what I'm talking about here is the framing that I put in for the toilet carrier. I had to run a stud from the floor all the way up to the ceiling behind this bulkhead. I had to do 3 studs like that. That was really hard to get in there. And it took me quite a long time to get those studs in because of the fact, like I said, that that space behind that bulkhead is very cramped, and trying to put fasteners up there was really hard. So I'm pointing out here that I have a double stud to the left there and then a double stud to the right. And the space between those double studs is 19 inches. And how I maintained that space was by using a 2x4. I screwed it into the sole plate so I could keep that spacing. And I also used a level to make sure the wood went plumb. And what I just pointed out there, as you see on the edge of that little sill there, the 2x6s in this house are all kind of weird. They're not normal 2x6s, so I had to shave the wood quite a bit. So that one, I didn't actually shave it, I just left it as is. Then I'm talking about the sole plate, because that sole plate portion on the left there is not really a 2x6. So when I put in the new piece on the right to repair the sill, or the sole plate on the right there, that caused a problem with the foot of the toilet carrier on the left. So I had probably about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of that foot hanging off the edge of the sole plate. And I had a couple braces in the front to keep the toilet carrier flush with the edge of the wall studs. What I'm talking about here is a hole that I drilled down to the shower drain. So the shower drain is right below this sole plate there. So the vent line will come up through there, and then the drain will go back down to the main stack. And that's all connected through a T. So I had to make sure I had that all lined up correctly. And I also had to drill a hole in the top plate to go up into the attic. So using a level, I had to use a level quite a bit to make sure these holes lined up and were plumb with each other. I used that self-feeding bit there to drill a hole in the sole plate. That's a 2 1/8 inch bit, and I did the same thing up above. I actually had to change the bit later on for the top plate because it was actually larger because it was a 2-inch pipe. What I'm talking about here is the electrical work that I had to do. I forgot that the inspector was, I had to get that inspection done because my permit was expiring that next day. So I quickly got the electrical work done and called the city to have an inspector come out the next day to inspect the work. So what I'm talking about here is that I had to move the outlet from kind of where that cavity is, where the toilet carrier is going to go, and I moved it to the left. And I just pointed out there that I was originally planning on putting it where those copper lines are, but that wasn't really a good idea. So I shifted over there. I was a little bit concerned about being able to nail that box up on those studs. That's why I didn't want to put it there, but it worked out okay. I'm talking about the original power wire that came from the attic down to where the box was located before, and I had to run that to that junction box instead, and then splice into that wire in the junction box, and then run it down the wall to the new location. Okay, so what I'm showing here is I've got the shower drain all installed. So I'm getting ready to talk a little bit about this stack, this new stack that I'm going to put in for the toilet carrier pipe. And I've already, as you can see, I've already done the work to drop this stack down. And what I'm doing now is building the stack that goes up to the toilet carrier. So I've got the combo Y, as you see there. And then on top of that, I'll be putting a setup with 2 22.5-degree elbows on top of that. And I'm just kind of pointing out the fact that it had to kind of bend back under the wall so that the 4-inch pipe that I was going to install was right at the edge of the sole plate and the floor up above. And I'm pointing out the fact that I had to cut a notch in the bulkhead for the kitchen, and I made sure that it wasn't load-bearing. The load-bearing walls are in front of me. There's the outside wall that I just pointed to, and then also the wall behind me. So I cut a notch in there using the multi-tool. And I'm pointing out the fact that I put a piece of tape across the multi-tool so I kept the depth of the cut at 5/8 of an inch. Try to make it a uniform cut. And then to get the back part of that cut, I actually had to go upstairs and just kind of hang down through that hole there to cut the back part of that notch out. And I just pointed out that I had to do that in 2 cuts because of the length of the blade. Okay, so I've got the vent line put in for the toilet carrier right off of that combo Y there. And then on the left side, you see that the drain pipe goes up to where the toilet carrier is going to be. And I've got the reducer increaser below the floor there. So I'm just talking about the vent line and how I ran that from this lower floor up through that floor upstairs. And you can kind of see it maybe a little bit, but I made a small mistake where I started to drill my hole and I realized I was in a bad location and I moved it to the right like about a 1/2 inch. So that's why that hole appears to be bigger than it really is. So what's coming up next is I'm going to talk about how I was able to make sure that the hole that I drilled through the top plate here lined up with the hole that I drilled through the sole plate in the floor upstairs. So what I did is I cut my hole in the top plate using a hole saw. So I cut all the way through. And then I left the hole saw, I just kind of hung it through the top of the hole there. And I used the the drill bit on that hole saw as kind of my point of reference. And I used a plumb bob, hung it off of the bottom of that floor up there to make sure that I knew exactly where I needed to be centered. And then I drilled through the floor using a 1/4 inch bit just to make sure.